Hello everyone, Silver Contrail here, back with another Mod Mayhem video, talking about a different mod this time. This is the mod called Redstone In Motion, and what it is essentially is an attempt to replicate the RedPower 2 frames, which is a critical part, at least in my opinion, of RedPower 2, something that was really cool, something I want to do a lot with. And then RedPower 2's developer Eloram sort of fell off the face of the earth. She kind of vanished. And a lot of people have been trying to pick up where she left off. So, frames, this Redstone In Motion mod is the attempt to replicate those frames and, in fact, improve upon them. And I think it does a really good job at that. Regardless of what your thoughts on RedPower 2 are, I think it's a really good mod, and I would love to see it added to Feed the Beast. I think it will be in the future. I'm not sure if you can go ahead and add it right now. I didn't have any success with it, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. This is a Forge mod, like the Attack on Titan mod that I talked about before. They got a ton of views. In fact, I have that on right now. I've got the stuff on. I'm even in the same world that I was in before. All you need in here is Forge Mod Loader, and you're good to go. So, Forge Mod Loader, and then put this mod in your mods folder, and you should be good. Let's change something real quick. And let's narrow down our render distance. Like I've talked about before, my laptop is at the end of its life. So, basically, we have some crafting recipes here. We can talk about real briefly. If you tab over, so if you're in creative mode and you go over one, you can come to the Redstone In Motion tab, and this has all the Redstone In Motion blocks. Not a ton of them. There are actually 5 different types of frames, 2 different carriage engine, and then a motor. We've got a screwdriver, which is our tool for this mod. It lets us do a bunch of stuff. And then we've got these 3, which are actually crafting components. The carriage crosspiece, the carriage panel, and the carriage framework, which are mostly made using sticks. These guys require redstone blocks, iron blocks, and I think furnaces. They don't require any power, and they'll just work regardless, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So the first thing, obviously everything's in the description. If you want to go there and look at the crafting recipes, they're there for you, so you can check them out. Just follow the link that I'll have down below. You can also download the mod there pretty quickly. So yeah, this is basically all that's in the mod. There is another block called I believe it's called a carriage controller. It's not in here currently. I'm using the July version of this mod. It works with ComputerCraft, so it might not be enabled until like ComputerCraft is in here. So that might just be why that's the case. But that's, if that's relevant to you, then yeah, there will be an extra block, and I might mention it briefly after we go through all of these other things. So let's talk about what each frame does, and we'll talk about the basic frame to begin with. This is the frame carriage, and it carries any block that's directly touching it whenever it moves. So how do we move a carriage or a frame? Pretty simply. Oop, there we go. We attach a carriage engine or a carriage motor, whichever one. And I'll show you the difference between that in a minute. And then we've got to apply some sort of redstone. So let's grab a block of redstone. That's usually the easiest way to move these things. So if I apply some redstone power on, say, this side, you can see that the entire structure here moves. So if I apply it again, it moves again. If I apply it again, and it continues to follow this repeat pattern. Now any blocks I attach to this frame will move with the frames. So if I put a couple blocks on here, and then apply redstone power, you see these blocks move as well. So it's not just the frames that are moving, it's the blocks that are attached to it. So basically, when I apply power to this frame motor, every frame that's connected to it, or is connected to another frame that's eventually connected to this motor, will move. Also, any blocks that are directly touching one of these frames, one of these frame carriages, will also be moved. What won't be moved is any frames or any blocks that are too far away, that they aren't touching a frame directly. Even if they are touching blocks that are going to be moving, if they aren't touching a frame, they won't be moved. They'll stay. So we'll see these two blocks right here will stay in place. So you can see how they stayed, they didn't move. So this is only useful if you want to move blocks that are directly touching these guys. So if you want to move more, we have to look at the other, basically the other frames. But yeah, that works pretty well. So here's, as another example, we can do something like this, and then we apply the power. You can see it just moves these guys. But let's try another method. Let's use the platform carriage. The platform carriage carries an entire body of blocks it's connected to. Ignore the decoration. Actually, in fact, I'll grab a blank one, because we'll mention that a bit later. Okay, so we put these guys down, and just like last time, if I apply a redstone signal, all of these frames, since they're connected, are going to move. And they move over one. So anything that's directly connected to them will still move. The exception, I believe, being anything that's attached to the side. Nope, it'll move them. Okay, so no matter where they're attached to, they'll move. The difference here is that as long as I go up with these blocks, now remember last time, if I tried to move this, only the bottom one would move. Now, all three of them move. So this controls anything that's above it. Additionally, if you don't have anything, it doesn't have to necessarily be a straight line. As long as this block is connected to another block that's moving and it's over the top of the platform carriage, it will move all of them. So we go over here. You can see the whole structure now moves at one. If I destroy this block and then I power it, at that point it does disconnect. So it does need to be connected somewhere to the main stack. But as long as it's over one of these guys, it'll work. Another thing that won't work in this case would be, there we go. And then we apply some redstone power. Or never mind, it does work. I must have done something wrong on my testing. I tried to get that to work and it wouldn't do it. How far can you go out with this then? Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Well, that's pretty cool. Can I go down? How far can I go down? Let's see what happens if we do this. Huh, I guess so. These guys are a little bit more interesting than I thought. Fancy. Okay, so that's the platform carriages. The next ones, we don't want this guy. We want the support carriage. And then we'll do the structure carriage. Okay, so actually let's do the structure carriage first. No, nah, let's do support. The support carriage is carries a straight line of blocks. So the side that isn't filled in, so this side, is the side that it'll be moving stuff out of. Now I can change this side by clicking on it with the screwdriver, so that means it'll only move these blocks. So if I apply redstone power here, now if I disconnect, and then it doesn't work, of course, this one is the one that's, yeah, I believe this one's the one that's picky about whether or not it's directly above it or not. It will not move this last one here. Yeah, see, as you can see, it didn't move that one. It stayed up. So these guys are interesting. They let you do some neat stuff. And then we've got the template carriage, which is probably the more difficult one to understand. I'll save the structure carriage for last. It's probably my favorite. Okay, so here's an example. Let's say I want to move something, and maybe I'm not able to move it using any of the other ones. So what I'll try to do is instead, like I want to just move these three. So instead of actually just placing them and then placing maybe support carriages underneath it, or frame carriages, which would be an option, something I could do. Instead, what I'm going to do is lay down these, oh, where is it? There we go. Template carriages. And then I'm going to throw carriage engine here, and then I'm going to right click with the screwdriver, and it's going to make those blocks disappear. So what happens when I place blocks back? And that's what we're going to see. Now, basically what it's going to do is it's going to treat these guys as if they were basically as if they were frames. They won't move anything they're next to, but they will move themselves. So when you want to use the template carriage, simply lay out a pattern that you want to move your blocks. Click the anchor block with your screwdriver, and then lay down the motor, and then watch it go to work. It'll just move all of the ones that you had this template carriage, no matter what blocks you actually put here afterwards. So that's pretty cool. It lets you have a little bit more control over what you want to move, and it lets you build whatever you want, I guess. You know, you can use whatever material you want. There are ways to imitate materials, but this one actually uses those blocks, which is neat. The only thing is, I think you do lose these template carriages, which kind of sucks. Moving on. So the next thing, the last thing, is the structure carriage. And structure carriage, I'm going to take a moment to set up, because it takes a little bit of setup, and then I'll show you guys when I get back. The last carriage to talk about is the structure carriage. Specifically, this carries an entire cuboid of the world, so anything that's within this box will be moved. And the way you kind of define it after you made this box is you close all the sides, which takes just not too many clicks, and then anything inside that range will be moved when you try to move the whole carriage, which is, you know, pretty cool. In addition to this, we'll use a different motor in order to make this happen. That is the carriage motor. So we've got the carriage engine, which is what we've been using, that moves with your frames. The carriage motor is more similar to the frame motor that you find in RedPower. So if we move this guy over, and we place him down, I'll place it right here. The carriage motor does not move with the frame system. When I try to move the frames, it will stay in place. So I'll put this down here. See, the entire structure moves up. Now what's cool is that these blocks, despite not being attached to anything, they're just floating in midair, they actually move with the whole frame system. Now you can make this pretty much as big as you want. If you watch some of the videos on the thread, they'll actually show them moving an entire house using this system. If you want to move a whole building, this might be an option, especially if that building has a lot of free-floating objects in it. Now the last thing that you can do with this is actually shape what your frames look like, and that's simply using crafting. So if I wanted to create some of these guys that look like iron blocks, I simply do this, and you can see that the tooltip changes and it says decoration, a block of iron. So now when I place it, it doesn't necessarily look any different until I use the screwdriver and I close its sides, and then suddenly it becomes an iron block, and you can't tell the difference. Unless, of course, you try to mine it, in which case you'll tell the difference pretty quick. So that's, you know, a really cool way to get that accomplished. Again, with any regular carriage, you can just click with the screwdriver and close its sides if you want to, you know, make sure that it looks cool. But this, for some of these, it does affect how it interacts with the blocks, so you got to be careful with that. Otherwise, you know, I would definitely, you know, I think the iron looks nice. But otherwise, you can do it whatever you want. If you want to make a building that moves, you can do that. Or otherwise, if you want to use some some of this stuff to create some neat structures. It's sort of like the next step from pistons, in my opinion, where you have pistons that move blocks, and then these things that move a whole lot of blocks. One last thing to talk about, there is a continuous mode on these guys. If you flip the switch, see it just keeps firing. If you're going to use it with the carriage motor or the carriage engine, I'd be a little bit careful. It can like fly away from you indefinitely, which it can be kind of weird. But otherwise, that's pretty cool. You know, you can turn it on and it'll just run until it completes its task. And you know, if you time it correctly with computer craft, you can have something fully extend and then come back, and you'll have to keep sending it redstone signals each time. You just send it one signal, wait however long, and then send another signal when you want to retract it. So it's pretty easy, I think. But yeah, that's about it. I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about anymore. I hope to see it in Feed the Beast. I think it's really cool. And I know there might be some issues with that. The mod creator is known with Bucket, and there's some drama there, but you know, whatever. It's a cool mod. These textures are really high res, and I think they're causing a lot of the weird lag issues that I'm getting. They're really high res. I think they'll have some 16x textures when it's completed. But yeah, like everything's in the video description. I would suggest trying it out. It's pretty fun, and there's some cool things you can do with it. I know I'll definitely try to do some cool stuff with it, especially if it comes to Feed the Beast. Then I have some ideas. There's stuff I wanted to do with frames, and then they took frames out, or they took RedPower 2 out because it wasn't updated, and there was stuff I still wanted to do. This gives me the opportunity to hopefully do that down the line. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are enjoying the server as well, with that being in beta testing. And that's about it. So until next time then.